Welcome to the Codcast, where today we're trying to better understand the policy debate about Boston's Municipal Harbor Plan, which outlines planning principles for the city's 42-acre downtown waterfront. First, Kim Janey, the acting mayor, moved to withdraw the plan entirely. Then, when the governor said it couldn't be withdrawn, only amended, the city council unanimously approved a resolution last week calling for just that. The resolution said, quote, in addition to not reflecting the new realities of climate change, the current municipal harbor plan does not take into account the moment of renewed civil rights and racial equity. The municipal harbor plan should reflect the city's effort to make all aspects of the waterfront accessible to those disenfranchised and separated from the waterfront. Our first guest is Kathy Abbott, the president and CEO of Boston Harbor Now, who supports the efforts of Janey and the city council. Glad to have you with us, Kathy.
It's terrific to be here. Thanks, Bruce.
So if you could sum up for us somewhat briefly why you think the Municipal Harbor Plan, approved by the city in 2017 and the state in 2018, should be scrapped.
Well, let me just start by saying that the Boston Harbor Now has not been supporting the scrapping of the plan. That said, when Mayor Janey withdrew it, we were supportive and are supportive of the mayor and the city council's interest in amending it and improving it, because we have said consistently since the plan was signed off on that we think, in fact, the plan could be better. So we continue to feel that way. And I think the issues that you just highlighted in that quote in particular, and it wasn't that those issues weren't around when the plan was being done several years ago, they were, but I think certainly the awareness and the interest has been heightened, both in terms of the concerns around resiliency and concerns around equitable access to the waterfront.
So most of us don't follow the Municipal Harbor Plan that closely. So I'm thinking of a sort of a broad documents setting out principles or planning principles for how you develop along the waterfront and deal with the harbor. So does that preclude the resolution, for example, talked about what are the new realities of climate change? I'm having a little hard time. Will we write into it that the new realities of climate change if we amend it? What does that mean? I don't really understand it.
I think the opportunity is we as a city, the BPDA, to really think comprehensively about those 42 acres that are in the downtown. Historically, we have planned parcel by parcel, and particularly in response to climate resiliency, we know parcel by parcel really isn't effective. You really have to look at the whole thing. So we think this opportunity to look at to look again at the district as an entire district and looking at every single parcel in it, and not just these two proposed developments, both the Pinnacle and the Hook Lobster, but that entire section of waterfront, given its importance as a gateway to the harbor, and also its importance, as we learned a couple winters ago, as a flood pathway. That there's a very exciting opportunity to look at it as a major civic destination that is both a major entry point and a place to protect the city from our harbor.
But I thought that was the whole point of the document in the first place, to take a comprehensive look at the 42 acres.
That's not really, I mean, the municipal harbor plans are focused on, it does take a look at the district, but it really then honed in on a couple of very specific projects within that. And it's really about giving municipalities an opportunity to redefine within the context of Chapter 91 what their specific needs are. So if they want to go over and above some of the limitations in Chapter 91, which is what these projects needed to do, then that's what they use the municipal harbor planning process for.
So the 600-foot building that you're talking about is the Harbor Garage that's owned by Don Chiafaro.
Right.
Do you oppose that building?
No, but the issue there, we don't oppose the building. What we are concerned about, and we've said all along, is that we think it's really critical that when those exemptions are made, or when those what would you call them, the deviations from the specifics of chapter. So chapter 91 calls for 50 to 150 foot high buildings right along the waterfront in that area. What Don has proposed is a 400 to 600 foot building. And what we have said consistently is if you're gonna change those specs to the benefit of the development, then the public benefits that are being derived from those increases need to be commensurate.
And you don't believe they are?
We don't think they are yet. No, we have said that consistently.
Okay, so it's not the height so much, it's the public benefits that accompany the height that you have a concern with.
Yes. Yes.
So as an outsider, though, it sort of seems like all these issues get conflated a little bit. Some people might be wanting to stop that building. There's clearly an effort to do that.
Mhm.
And then there are others that want to have a better deal, if you will. So how, as an outsider, a regular person, how do you tell who's on pushing what agenda here?
I think that's really hard to do. I do think that we've heard consistently that for the city to be being more proactive and providing what it wants to see, letting the developers react to that as opposed to the PDA reacting to the developers, and then to have a consistent formula or ask for what the benefits are going to need to be in order for these exemptions to be would be really helpful, because what we've heard from developers is that they're actually willing to do even more in terms of public benefit, but they want it to be more consistent. They want to know what they're getting into ahead of time, and they want to know what the public sector is going to be putting in as well.
So what does it mean to make all aspects of the waterfront accessible to those disenfranchised and separated from the waterfront? What does that mean to you? And that's in the resolution that the city council passed.
Yeah, it means that what we're developing along the waterfront needs to be accessible and welcoming to all people. So it means that you've got to have amenities that are available at every price point, from free to whatever. That the ground floors of buildings that are being developed along there need to be done in a way that are welcoming to everybody, and not seem to be places that are not accessible to everyone. That the 50% lot coverage of all developments along the waterfront, that there's plenty of open space, that the Harbor Walk, and we talk a lot about Harbor Walk 2.0, which is both a welcoming walkway along the waterfront, and in this day and age, something that also is going to help to protect us from sea level rise and storm surge. But that all these things are built and developed in a way that do not seem elitist, do not seem to literally physically block off visually or otherwise or economically access to that waterfront.
So if you're building a building with condos or rental units, did I understand you would have a price range for every income level?
It's not ideal. That would be wonderful. And the city does have formulas that require, certain amounts of affordable and accessible housing. But this is really, you were asking about making the waterfront itself accessible. That really has everything to do with those ground floor, with the developments of the ground floor. What's the retail that's going in there? What are the restaurants that are going in there? What are the public amenities like bathrooms or meeting space or programs that really are that everybody in the city and frankly the region, because we think of the harbor as a regional resource, would find interesting and welcoming and feel comfortable coming to. We've heard from the survey that was just done by the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront, came back loud and clear saying that a lot of people who do not live on the waterfront and who may come from neighborhoods away don't necessarily feel welcome or comfortable coming down to the waterfront.
Well, I think that's true, and perhaps I'm not sure. Maybe you could point to a specific thing, but there's a lot of buildings down there that are fighting Don Chafara, for example, that are not welcoming at all. And I suppose they're already grandfathered in, so you can't do anything about that.
No, that's what we're suggesting, that we want to look at all of those properties along that waterfront and encourage everybody to be looking at it, particularly in these lenses today of of equitable access and resiliency, and doing whatever they can to become more welcoming today, and more resilient.
But how does a plan, unless it's a zoning issue that you're giving an exemption from height limits or something, how do you tell, like Harbor Towers, you've got to be more welcoming to the public? That's a very tall building right on the harbor. It's sort of like a gated area around it too. It's not a let's go in and check out what the folks are doing there type place. How do you do that?
It gives the impression of being a gated area, I think, but it is not a gated area. There is a harbor walk around Harbor Towers. There is public art at Harbor Towers. They could do more to promote it. That could be further developed as part of this Harbor Walk 2.0 idea. It could be made to be more inclusive and more welcoming and more clear that as a member of the general public, you are encouraged, not just welcome, but encouraged to walk from the New England Aquarium to the Boston Harbor Hotel, for instance. You can do it with signage, you can do it with landscape, you can do it with amenities like benches and art, and you can do it with programming. We actually think it would be exciting to begin to see some of the contributions that developers and others make to these projects be pooled. And we think about whole districts in terms of what's happening along that waterfront in terms of these kind of amenities, so that we can make sure that there's some consistency across the waterfront.
And last question for you, the amending process, it took quite a long time, as I understand it, to develop the original municipal harbor plan. Is this going to be a 2 or 3 year effort to amend it, or will this happen very quickly? What do you think?
I would imagine it'll take some time, because I think, like all plans, the process is as important as the product. And one of the things that we're all working hard to do these days is to be more inclusive rather than less inclusive in that process, and to hear from more people. So I don't think it will be a really quick process. That said, I have no idea how long it might take.
Kathy Abbott, the president and CEO of Boston Harbor Now, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Bruce. It's been great to be with you.
Let's welcome our next guest, Rick Domino, the president and CEO of the business group A Better City. Glad to have you, Rick.
Glad to be on, Bruce, and thanks for inviting me.
So why don't you explain to us where you stand in this debate over the municipal harbor plan?
Well, Bruce, A Better City was fortunate to be invited to be part of the municipal harbor plan task force, and A Better City, as you know, represents the business community, and we have a lot of members that represent properties and major tenants that exist along the downtown corridor and at the waterfront. So I was pleased that then Mayor Walsh invited us to be part of the task force. I can tell you that I didn't think that it was going to take 5 years for us to figure out what the municipal harbor plan should say and what it should speak to. But I got to thank the Boston Planning and Development Agency and all the stakeholders and participants that put time and effort into that 5-year planning effort. And I want to thank the Commonwealth, because at the end of the day, I thought the municipal harbor plan did what it was supposed to do. And the city of Boston recommended that it be approved, and the Commonwealth approved it. And so I think it's a municipal harbor plan that did what it was meant to do. I think at the end of the day, it is a good quality municipal harbor plan, and one that should stand, go forward, and then allow the process to move forward regarding the Boston Planning and Development Review, which, in my opinion, is much more suited and much better positioned to deal with more specifically the issues of resiliency and equity. And of course, I look forward to that, because I think resiliency and equity regarding the waterfront are critically important. But I think the municipal harbor plan is, it's kind of very strict in terms of what it's supposed to do. And so I think after 5 years, I think we achieved what it was meant to achieve. And I'm, again, grateful for all the folks that participated. And I hope it's allowed to stand. And I look forward to the next steps in the development review process.
Rick, what do you think this debate is about then? Because one side is saying this municipal harbor plan missed the boat because it isn't dealing with equity and isn't dealing properly with resiliency. You're saying it does, and there are other mechanisms to deal with them as time progresses. Is there some hidden agenda here that's going on?
Well, I think that it's reasonable for advocates to push for what they believe in. I think that it's also important to know what the municipal harbor plan is and what it isn't. The municipal harbor plan is a tool and a process to deal directly with a city and a private developer's interest in moving forward and getting relief, what's called Chapter 91. Chapter 91 are very thoughtful regulations that are meant to protect the public interest and trust regarding the waterfront. It was put in place a long time ago. But it's meant to really focus on matters that relate to the water sheet, public accommodations along the water's edge, shadow. There's regulations that affect density and height, but meant to be there relative to its relationship to the impact on the water sheet and the waterfront and the harbor. So getting relief, if you will, substitutions and any refinements or modifications in that Chapter 91 is meant to be something that's dealt with when cities in towns that have waterfront properties want to modify their relationship to the Chapter 91 regulations. Sadly, those regulations haven't been updated for years. And as they stand, there's no requirements to actually deal with issues of resiliency or equity in that regulatory process. Now, I got to give the city and stakeholders and advocates credit. Again, I used to be the chair of the Harbor Task Force, or the Boston Harbor Association, and we started using Chapter 91 and the municipal harbor plan process for dealing with issues of resiliency. But that was more of a kind of an informal influence on those regulations. Developers in the Commonwealth were fine to accommodate some of that. And again, believe it or not, the downtown municipal harbor plan that we're currently debated did already include some matters that relate to resiliency. So, but in the meantime, the Boston Planning and Development Agency and We Need a Better City work with them and others have developed very strict guidelines and processes on how to deal with resiliency. And the city and other public agencies have been weighing in their own way on how to deal with matters of equity. And I think that's all good. But the municipal harbor plan is not one that specifically speaks at the moment to resiliency and equity. So we're kind of asking a tool to do something that's not meant to do.
You mentioned that some of your members have properties along the waterfront there. And there are two projects that, as I understand it, this municipal harbor plan granted some exception to the height rule. The Harbor Garage and the Hook property, both were allowed to go much higher than what was allowed in the harbor plan. Are those two sort of exceptions to that? Are they what's prompting people to try and get rid of the old one and start over? Or because it sort of sounds like you're saying that there is a vehicle for dealing with the concerns that people are raising. Is it more about those two properties?
Well, I mean, everybody has, and of course, Boston's well known for getting involved with civic dialogue regarding density and height. I mean, it's whether it's happening in our neighborhood or if it's happening in the waterfront, folks get concerned about those issues, but there's the appropriate way to talk about that. And that's through zoning and through the Boston Planning and Development review process. Density and height does pertain to the municipal harbor plan, but again, it's more related to its relationship to the water sheet and open space and public accommodation. And so, people might have, obviously there's some advocacy concern that they don't want tall buildings on the waterfront or density on the waterfront. And yes, they might be trying to leverage the municipal harbor plan and its approval to address their specific concerns. But it's, trying to use a hammer when you really need a saw. I mean, they're using the wrong tool to push on that. And I think, for the development community and for Boston's economy, you need to have real clear roadmaps relative to how to move the development process forward. The Municipal Harbor Plan has a specific, areas of concern that it needs to follow. And I think to try to kind of put it on its head and call it something that it's not, or use it for something that's not meant to be, I think we need to be careful not to disrupt kind of what the intention is, let that process go forward based on what it's supposed to do, and then allow the development review process of the city to go forward and take the necessary steps to make a project even better. And that's what we're supposed to do. And again, we all look forward to that. So I think the advocates in this particular case are barking up the wrong tree. I think the next step for the advocates should be related to the Boston Planning and Development Agency development review process.
Walk me through one last thing, Rick, and that is one concern that's been raised, and I think you agree. So you said you agree with it to some degree, that this whole issue of civil rights and racial equity as it applies to municipal harbor plan or the waterfront. When people start talking about that, I get a little confused about what they mean. Do they mean that everybody should be able to walk down to the waterfront, or that everybody should be allowed to live on the waterfront? There should be property set aside for all income levels and all sorts of groups, or how far do you go with that? What do you think is being debated here? Because it's been a little vague. It hasn't really, is it access? Is that primarily the issue?
Well, the notion of equity regarding our waterfront or any aspect of how we think about cities and how they go forward is critical priority. It's got to be addressed, and it needs to be seriously incorporated in a wide range of policies and actions. In this particular matter, I think when we think about equity is how do we ensure that the waterfront is a common ground and really is inviting everybody to it, including our communities of color, and making it accessible, also making it friendly, and actually speaking and connecting to those communities in ways that are very appealing and attractive. One of the examples that I like to think about is the fountain that we have right in the downtown waterfront that the Greenway and the Conservancy put in place, where we see kids from all neighborhoods splashing around on that bit of common ground. So what are other things that we can be doing to attract all people to our waterfront? One of the things that, I got to thank Vivian Lee and the Boston Harbor Association and many people that got involved with this is we created a harbor walk. And how do we make that harbor walk, which has been very successful, but even more successful in terms of how we attract the diversity of our city to that water's edge? And what kind of programming, what kinds of things that might appeal to communities in our city that really haven't had a chance to be as connected to the waterfront. Another organization, Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, was connecting people, and we had the whole Harbor Island camp experience. Those are great ways of providing access to the waterfront, and we need to do more of that. And so how can development in the future think about programming and uses in relationship to the waterfront that might be attractive and connect with all of our residents and all of our folks that can bring the kind of diversity of our city to the water's edge that's important. And that's a very important matter, and one that does need consideration. And second is how does the development community and the city kind of take the economic outputs of development and connect those opportunities to our neighborhoods and make sure that people of color have access to those opportunities. And that's another important policy priority, and one that needs to be given serious attention. So I agree that needs to be given very thoughtful and serious consideration. Sadly, unless we change and update the Chapter 91 regulations, those that matter is not a matter of regulatory purview, if you will, of Chapter 91, nor is it yet a matter of municipal harbor planning regulatory purview. So at the moment, we have other ways of considering those things, and that's through city policy. And I appreciate that. And I think the city's actually starting to lean in on that a lot more. And so is the private sector. We care about that a lot as well. So I see that as a good thing. And I think we need to try to make sure we're successful at that.
Rick Domino, President and CEO of A Better City, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks for having me, Bruce. Always enjoy talking to you.
And to all our listeners, we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.